Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I am here at the News Forum where all voices matter. As we look back on 2024 and look ahead to 2025, it's a pleasure to have special guest Dr. Brian Lee Crowley with us. He is the managing director of the Macdonald-Laurier Institute think tank, and he comes to us from Ottawa. Welcome to Boom and Bust.
Thanks for the invitation to be here, Tony.
It's great to have you, of course. And first, let's look back on 2024. I know we've had some drama in Ottawa the last few days, but sort of more generally, what do you see as the major trends?
Well, look, anybody you ask what happened in 2024, they're going to say, first of all, the American presidential election, the election of Donald Trump, the collapse of the Democrats. That's number one. So we could look back at what that's telling us about the Biden presidency. We can talk about what that means looking forward for the next 4 years. But in addition to that, we've seen the rise of populist parties in Europe, very weak governments in a number of European countries. The German government just fell. The French government fell just a few weeks ago. Big election in the UK with a big majority, and that's a very interesting thing to look at. And of course, here at home, you referred to the fact that it's been a year, as Oscar Wilde might have said, full of incident. We've seen the collapse of the Liberal Party in the polls federally. We've seen several provincial elections, which have been interesting in themselves. We've seen the departure of Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister. And I think it's fair to say it may be a little overused now, but we have an embattled prime minister, and everybody is waiting to see which way he's going to jump. Is he going to stay in office, or is he going to take a walk in the snow? All of those things would be terrific to talk about today, Tony.
Sure, and certainly at the time of the recording of this particular episode, we don't know the answer to that question. Maybe it'll befall us before this is actually broadcast, but your major point is certainly there. And it seems to be, just again, looking generally around the world, more of a feature rather than a bug. There, you mentioned a lot of the pressure on incumbent governments from the populist side of things, populist left or populist right, to use the old terminology. Is that the world we're in now? It seems like the degrading of trust in the post-war institutions is really advancing quite prominently.
Yes, I happen to think that part of what we're seeing, Tony, is the playing out of a number of things that started in the COVID pandemic. And I think that there was a degree to which people said, look, this is a terrible thing. We need somebody in charge. We need a plan to get us through. People acquiesced in many of the policies that were put in place, long-term lockdowns, almost compulsory vaccinations, everything that happened here in Canada around the Freedom Convoy. And all of these things, I think, have had a long-term impact on people's thinking. They might have accepted them at the time, but I think in retrospect, it's certainly true for me. I don't know whether it's true for anybody else, but it's certainly true for me that in retrospect, I look back and I think, I can't believe that I went along with, shutting down the entire economy of the country for months at a time. That people were essentially locked in their homes, threatened with police if they did more than walk around the block. The invocation of the Emergencies Act. I think all of these things have been working away in people's minds, and they're coming to the conclusion it was too much. That we went along with expert advice that, in many cases, in retrospect, didn't actually seem that sound. And I think a lot of the people who sold us the approach that we adopted to the pandemic, a lot of those people are the ones who have been rejected in the face of populist uprising and rebellion against many of those things that I've just mentioned.
That's a lot to take in, and I agree with you. We've been into a slow burn, maybe a quick burn when you look at the advance of history. Brian, we're going to take a brief break for commercial messages. We will be right back to you after this break.